This is English shorthand dictation number 367, and the dictation speed is 120 words per minute. Ready? Start. We have heard the learned counsel for the parties. Learned counsel for the appellant had argued that the appellant had no premeditated mind to kill the deceased wife and that he had no intention even to kill her. Therefore, the provisions of Section 302 of IPC are not applicable, and at best, he can be charged under Section 304 of IPC. The above submission has been strongly opposed on the ground that the appellant had burnt the deceased wife with a matchstick, fully knowing that she was drenched in kerosene oil and that lighting of matchstick and throwing it upon her would certainly cause her death. In the case at hand, admittedly, there are multiple dying declarations on record. The first dying declaration is in the form of the statement P1. This statement of the deceased wife before her death was made before the judicial first class magistrate Ernakulam. The said statement clearly reveals the cause and circumstances of the death of the deceased wife. The other statement, which can be read as a dying declaration, is P10, recorded by the head constable at General Hospital, Ernakulam, wherein also the deceased wife repeated the same narration as in P1 in relation to the incident of her death. Both the above statements, if read together, would reveal that on the fateful day the appellant had assaulted the deceased wife under the influence of alcohol. He even struck a blow on her chest and pushed her. At the time of the said incident, the children were playing in the courtyard. When the assault of the appellant became unbearable, she took the can of kerosene from kitchen and poured it on her body, whereupon her husband lighted a matchstick and burnt her. The magistrate before whom one of the dying declarations was recorded proves the correctness of the statement and that when the statement of the deceased was recorded, she was coherent and oriented. He also accepted that there was no reason for him to believe that the deceased was not in a position to make the statement or that the statement made by her stands vitiated for any reason. The statement of PW5 was supported by that of PW14. The statement of the deceased wife further categorically states that the appellant was in habit of drinking alcohol and used to assault her frequently in an inebriated condition. She also stated that various criminal cases are pending against the appellant in connection with similar kind of assaults. The above aspect, as stated by the deceased, was corroborated by the testimony of PW21. Even the DW1 also proved that the deceased at the time of the admission in the hospital narrated about her burn injuries and alleged that her husband assaulted her and that she had poured kerosene on herself, whereupon her husband had set her on fire. The medical report reveals that the deceased had suffered 96% burn injuries. The incident was also proved by the oral testimony of PW1 and PW2, the neighbors who took the deceased to the hospital in a jeep and have seen the deceased in burning state. In view of the aforesaid facts and circumstances and the evidence on record, there is no escape from the conclusion that the deceased died of burn injuries. She had herself poured kerosene upon her body and that the appellant set her ablaze and later tried to douse the fire by pouring water. The appellant also accompanied the deceased to the hospital. Now, the only point for consideration is whether, in the above circumstances, the appellant had any premeditated mind to kill the deceased, or was it due to grave and sudden provocation, which would not amount to murder or would at best be a case of culpable homicide, not amounting to murder, punishable with imprisonment for a term which may extend up to 10 years, or with fine, or with both, under Section 304 of IPC. In support of his above argument, learned counsel for the appellant relied upon Kalu Ram versus State of Rajasthan, which was case of a similar kind in connection with uxoricide by burning. However, it would be relevant and material to refer to exception 4 to section 300 of IPC, which defines murder before extending the benefit of the above decision to the appellant. It is on the strength of the above exception that, from the side of the appellant, it has been argued that the appellant is not guilty of murder, as he had no premeditated mind, and that the action of the appellant arose out of a sudden fight. In the first place, the fight was not sudden. The appellant and the deceased wife had a past history of quarrel, and that they had been quarreling on the fateful day before the actual incident. During their quarrel, PW1 had visited their house, and the deceased wife had shown some injuries received by her during the assault. However, realizing the quarrel between the two, he left, saying that he would come later on. It was thereafter that the incident of pouring kerosene and burning took place. So, there was sufficient time in between the two acts, and it cannot be said that there was a sudden quarrel and provocation leading to burning. The appellant saw the deceased wife drenched in kerosene and was conscious that if lighted, she would be burnt to death. Even then, he ignited her to fire. This shows premeditated mind to kill her. More particularly, the appellant cannot take advantage of the fourth exception only on the pretext that it was not on account of premeditated mind, or out of a sudden fight, or that his intentions were not, as he tried his best to douse the fire to save the life of the deceased wife. The benefit of the above exception would have been available to him had he not taken undue advantage of the situation. The exception clearly states that it would be applicable where culpable homicide is committed not only without premeditated mind in a sudden fight or quarrel, but also without the offender taking undue advantage of the situation. In the instant case, the appellant, upon seeing the deceased drenched in kerosene oil, clearly took advantage of the situation and lighted a matchstick and threw it upon her so that she could be burnt. The appellant, having taken undue advantage of the situation, cannot be extended the benefit of exception 4 to section 300 of IPC, so as to bring the case within the ambit of section 304 of IPC. In view of the above legal position, the ruling cited above would not benefit the appellant.